Hello. Before we get started, I'm going to tell you an anecdotal tale that I remembered recently. In a previous life, I was working at a different company. We were making a Star Wars game. And we were having a thing called a green light and a finance review. This is just an excuse to ensure that people will give us a lot of money that we can then set on fire while we make a game. And it's very important that when these people turn up, they go, "We're very impressed. We like what you've done." The trouble is when you're making a game, it doesn't look very impressive, not till it's finished. And so every time these people turn up, you lie to them. And you have to fart around and do things and pretend it's working. And then you cross your fingers and hope that they don't realize. And then you get the money that you can set fire to. So we got this Star Wars-y thing figured out, and then we got a warning. They'd come to watch the Millennium Falcon fly off. And we weren't doing spaceships for another year. We had no Millennium Falcon. We had no way of making a Millennium Falcon fly off. In fact, we only had one thing on our side. We had a Millennium Falcon, because our artists couldn't be stopped and they'd modeled it. I got put into a room, and they said, "We need the $20 million. How do we lie to them successfully?" And I said, "What have we got? We only have what we currently have. There's no time to do anything else." So I went home, drank half a bottle of scotch, had a hangover, and I came back. I said, "Right, here's what we're going to do. Load up the desert," because it's basically just sand. Put in a couple of the Tusken Raiders, and I want you to go and get me one of the NPCs, and I want you to take all the textures off it, which is the stuff that covers the mesh, and I want you to make it invisible. Okay, now I want you to make it 500 feet tall. And they were like, 500 feet tall, 500 feet tall. Then get the animation of the crouching down and put it in the corner. Get the sky dome. Sky dome is basically a big thing that wraps around a level to make it look like we have clouds. Set its collision to 0. That means that you can go through the sky zone. And then outside the sky dome, do an AOE, an area effect, of 55 billion points of damage. And they were like, "You've gone mad. None of this is getting us spaceships. Hang on. Now take the Millennium Falcon and turn it into a hat. And put it on the head of the invisible NPC." And so you walked in, and the Millennium Falcon was right there. I said, "Now hit the animation button and get the invisible dude to stand up." And as he stood up, the Millennium Falcon took off. And then I said, "Have him jump in the air." And he jumped in the air, and the Millennium Falcon went through the skybox and was instantly destroyed. We got the money. That's how I became a creative director. Right, hats, Millennium Falcon. I got this one from Nika what? Yeah, they're outside, they're great, they're very nice. Look, it's even got our names on it. Good, isn't it? Hats. Unfortunately, it's not Millennium Falcon, it's not going to help me. Then I noticed Tiny Build, they had hats. They didn't want to give me one, so I stole one, don't tell them. And it's not bad, but it's a bit orange, and I'm not Dutch. Then I found Belka Games, and theirs has got googly eyes. Now, the only way you get a Belka Game hat is by doing something. And whatever it is they're doing, there's a big crowd of people. And then you come up and you have a chance of getting a Belka hat. So I just went round the corner and stole it. But they have nice hats, so don't think about that. But it's not Millennium Falcon, never mind. And I thought to myself, well, I'm English, so I know. I'll wear a bowler hat. Now, you might be wondering why I keep bringing up the hat thing. And that's because you're going to all have to get used to wearing different hats to succeed in the industry. But the trouble is, bowler hats, they're all right. Bit English, though, aren't they? And we're a diverse cultural industry. So I have a better solution. I've decided I'm going to do the entire talk in a pair of sunglasses I stole and a sombrero. That's what I'm talking about right there. Now, where did I put the clicker? Here, put the clicker. Right, okay, let's get going. So this is a title screen. It's a title screen I would never do. It's a title screen I would never make. This is a title screen I was forced to have by corporate. Corporate took my slides and they said, they're not wargaming enough. We have to corporate them. And I went, I'm a creative person. And they went, but look what we've done. And I said, okay, but can I still have my original title slide? And they said, no. So I put it in anyway. So here's my first original title slide. Now, from this, you'll realize that I've been giving quite a lot of talks in lots of different places, or hopefully you could work that out. And obviously Vilnius, here we are, 2023. It's a living slide. It appears in every talk I've ever done, and that's really important. Because what it teaches you is to recycle. And that's really good. Because you recycle a lot of things when you're making computer games. That's how you make them successfully. So what am I going to talk about? Well, I'm so old. My daughter, who's 23 in America. No, wait, that's not right. She's 23 everywhere in the world. There you go, that's better. She pointed out that I was born in the 1970s. And I said, what? She said the 1970s. I was born in the 70s. Yes, the 1970s. What are you talking about? The 1700s, the 1800s, the 1900s. I went, shut up. And then I pointed out that she was born in the 00s, in the noughts. It's not very exciting, is it? So I'm so old, I'm going to tell you 10 things that I think you should do to have a career and 4 things I think you shouldn't do. Now, it's only fair to tell you that I love failure. I love being wrong. I'm really addicted to it. Now, you might be wondering why I'm telling you that. I'm telling you for a very particular reason. When you were little, you went to school, and you were only ever rewarded for being right. They put little crosses and ticks next to your work, and they grade it. The problem being told that you're only going to be praised if you're right is you'll only ever want to be right. And you become terrified of being wrong. But if you're willing to be wrong, you can go to some really strange, amazing places and learn lots of really interesting things. So, while I'm going to tell you 10 things you should do and 4 you shouldn't, I could be wrong. And that's exactly what that says. Thank you, corporate. I have to keep saying that or they'll kill me. So, what's the very first thing you've got to have? You've got to have passion. Absolute passion. If you don't have passion, you're not going to make it. Passion's really, really important. I'd say it was the most important thing for you to have. You can always tell if someone's got passion, because whatever it is they're doing it all the time. When I go out to a restaurant with my artist friends, they draw constantly. My audio friends are always humming and making noises. Me, I'm always busy designing and trying to be creative. I find passion's important because there's so much wrong with me. I'm asthmatic, so I can't run very fast. I'm dyslexic. I can't read. I left school with no education. I'm also colorblind, red, green, and brown, so thank you for putting me in the red room. Went round and round on that one. I also happen to be deaf at the top third of hearing, so I can't hear most of you. And I'm diabetic. Is that all of them? That's probably all of them. Not a great hand of cards, so what did I do? Well, I looked at the pictures in comics, I played role-playing games, and I had a home computer that had moved triangles firing squares at circles, which I was told were spaceships. And that ignited my passion. Good news about passion, you can all get it. It's free. It doesn't care where you went to school. It doesn't care how much money you've got. It doesn't care where your parents are from. Passion is available to everybody. Another good thing about passion, you can develop it. You can get a passion for things. You don't have to be innately born with it, and that's wonderful. I think if you don't have passion for making games, you've got to go and get it. The second thing you need with passion is energy, which reminds me. My caffeine delivery solution of choice is Red Bull. Other people have coffee, chocolate, whatever. That's mine. You've got to have energy. You've got to be able to do the gig. You've got to find the energy, however you do that. Manage the food you eat. Make sure you get sleep. Make sure you don't overwork. Make sure you don't stress yourself too much. If you haven't got the energy, it doesn't matter if you've got the passion. Now, if you can't get the passion and you can't get the energy, change jobs. Honestly, don't stay there. And if you're working with people who aren't passionate and they don't have the energy, stop working with them. They're not helping you. So, recap. Get energy, it's fuel. Get passion. Make sure you can find it if you can't change jobs. Simple stuff. Number 2, ambition. I'm going to talk about that before I put it up. I think it's really important for you to have ambition. People who are passive about what they want to do aren't going to help you. I mean, they will help you, but they're not going to help you. So you need to decide how much ambition you've got. Are you trying to be the best person in your studio? Are you trying to be the best person among the people that you're with? I mean, that's hard work. But if you are the best person of the people you're with in your studio, you stop learning. And if you're not going to have the ambition for that and you want to go bigger, maybe you're going to be the best person in the country, which is also really hard. But it's a good thing to aim for. And if not the country, why not the world? Why not strive? Why not really go for it? Figure out your ambition so you can set your expectations, and that way you won't be disappointed. And there's the ambition slide. Obviously, best in studio, best people I know. Anyone know who this is? No, he's from Vilnius. He's famous, but only in Lithuania, but apparently not to you lot. And then that, it's a Frenchman who doesn't like the cold. Apparently he was very good at fighting. So we've done a couple of do's, let's do a don't. Don't be obsessive. This is really, really important. There's one thing I can drill into anyone who wants to be good at creativity and design and art, engineering, all the different systems. Don't become obsessive. Your job isn't to just look at what you do. The amount of designers I interview, and all they want to do is tell me that they're a walking encyclopedia of computer games. Test me, ask me about any game. Well, that's not going to help me. I need you to think about things outside of it. The way to think about it, I'm going to use my sombrero, is imagine you have a big bucket that looks like a sombrero on your head, like that. And now, this isn't the bit you laugh. It's later. No, it's all right. And then what you do is you go and fill it full of ideas. You go find the ideas from everywhere, outside of gaming. And you put those ideas in there and you let them percolate. Because those ideas will be broken up and put together as new ideas. The more stuff you can bring to the table that isn't about your discipline, the better you will be. So while you need to know how to use Photoshop if you're an artist and all the stuff that goes with that, it's also really important you're looking at street graffiti and you're going to museums and you're looking at how charcoal works and real life drawings. But I would also argue it's important for you to go and figure out how car handles work, or try and figure out, how did Tesla make things. There's a couple of examples on the next slide. That's the design of everyday things. That's a really good book. It has a really good bit about doors. You wouldn't think doors are exciting, but it asks the following question. If you're walking towards a door and you've got to push the door, why does it have a handle? Because with a handle, you want to pull it. That's referred to as a Norman door, by the way. Then there's the Design Hall of Fame. You should always go look at that. There's some amazing stuff been designed. And that's how I pick things up. Be open-minded, put things in your hopper, share things. Don't be obsessive. Enough with the don'ts, let's get to a do. Knowledge. Knowledge is really important. It's how you prove you're very clever. It's what gives people confidence. Knowledge takes time, effort, and energy. If you want to be good at computer games, you need to learn knowledge outside of what you already know. So coming to a show like this is important, because that's how you get knowledge. Asking good questions, asking stupid questions. Knowledge is going to empower you. Why? Because making games is very complicated and difficult. You're going to have to learn about settings, investments, engines, tools, QA, packaging, onboarding. You're going to have live services, launch, retention, payment systems. It goes on and on and on and on and on. You don't need to know all of it to a great detail, but you should at least be aware of it. And if you meet somebody who works in gaming and they are doing something, I don't know, like payment systems, sit down and have a drink with them and talk and listen to them. Because that's their thing they're really good at. And you can harvest bits of information off them and show that you care. Because for that person, it's the single most important thing they do. And by showing that you have got an attitude and aptitude for it, it makes them feel like you care, because you do. And how do you do this? By being curious. Be prepared to talk to people, even strangers. I know that's hard for some of you. We're generally quiet little creatures in our industry. We don't really like talking to other people. Personally, I'm an introvert. I have an extrovert presentation style, but that's a lie. That's just to make my life easier. Once we have finished doing this talk, I'm going to go to my hotel room, lock myself in, and hate the human race. It's just how I am. So, recap. Loads of things to learn to build up knowledge. Show you care and talk to people. You do this by being curious. Being curious is like having a passion. You can learn curiosity. Another thing about being curious and knowledge, it's free. Don't have to go to college. Don't need a university degree. Doesn't care about your parents. Let's get to another do. Joy! Isn't that a lovely slide? A lovely slide. Corporate, well done. Better than my slide. I just drew a smiley face. They made it into joy. Why do you need joy? Because it's a super hard business, this business. It's tiring. It's full of disappointment. It's full of near misses. It drives you crazy. It can get bureaucratic and sludgy. The internet hates us. We're one of the few industries where we are the hated people, yet we're making the bloody thing that they're playing. God help you tell anyone that you worked on a game they don't like. So you need joy, because joy is how you get through it all. Joy is how you remain happy. I guess it's that or alcohol. So there are basically two ways I think you should deploy your joy. The first one is to do with the culture of your studio. They're the people that you're working with. Don't let anyone ever tell you that you have no influence over the culture of a studio. You do. The culture of a studio isn't in a box. It's not in a cupboard. It's not a statue. It's all the other people you're talking to. If you're not happy with the culture, work on changing it. If you like the culture, work on being accepted to it. And if you're a champion of the culture, promote it and do more things for the culture. Do that, and not only could you write a series of sci-fi books, deep cut, Paul, but you'll find joy. The second version is find joy in where you work, the actual location. I know the pandemic meant some of us had to work from home, well, most of us, but find the joy in that. Find the joy in your studio. Find the joy in your desk. Enjoying where you work, super important. If you don't, move. Not only do you need to enjoy where you're working, you need to enjoy what you're working on. Pro tip, if you're at a studio that's got more than 40 people and you're a designer, they are not going to make your game. Not going to happen. If it's 80 people, never going to happen. 120 people, fat chance. So you're always going to be working on somebody else's game. So you need to enjoy what you're working on. Do the best version of what you're doing that you can. And do it through working with other people. And that leads to enjoy who you're working with. I can't stand people who are massively talented and they're gits. They drive me mad. And then you go to the boss and you say, this person, I mean, I know they're very talented, but they're just horrible. And the boss will say something stupid, like, very difficult to replace. I mean, just stay away from them. That's the wrong answer. Don't abide these people. Don't live with these people. Get rid of them. And if they won't get rid of them, leave the studio. Joy. Contribute to your culture. You affect it. Where, what, and who. Super, super, super important. Well, enough about the do's. Let's do the don'ts. This one's a bit troublesome. Got a lot of people come up and argue with me about it. That's fine. I'm often wrong. If you're making games long term, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, you are not the audience. You probably never were, but you're definitely not the audience if you hang out. You might think you are. You might be sitting there going, I'm going to make a game for me. But at some point, there's just not the people out there to buy it, particularly not if you've got a big AAA game where you're going to have to shift tons of units. Realizing you're not the audience actually frees you up. And if you wonder about this and you think, well, why do we have to do it? Well, authors do it all the time. People who write books aren't writers, they're writing for their audience. When you see someone who's really talented, what do they always talk about? They talk about the fans, they talk about the people, because they're making things for them. Now, sometimes that means you have to do your greatest hits. Doesn't matter who you are. If you're a band and you've got some famous songs, you've got to play them when you go on the road. Otherwise, the fans will be upset. But that's okay, because you can get better at your greatest hits. True story. Years ago, there was a company called Nintendo. You might have heard of them. They make a game with a plumber. He's Italian. So as a result, he's very short, and he runs after women, and he smashes walls down and does no plumbing. And then he steals your money. And then he eats mushrooms to get high. It's blowing your minds, isn't it? Come to think of it, Nintendo might be racist. Edit that. They're not, they're lovely. I love Nintendo. It's just a cheap joke. I apologize, I could have been wrong. But they wanted to make another game called Star Fox, which is a big space game. It doesn't matter if you've never heard of it, just imagine there's a big space game. But they didn't know how to make space games. So they got a UK company called Argonaut and got them to make the game. And Argonaut set about diligently making a space game. It had a big spaceship and it flew around and it could go behind the moon and it could go to the stars and shoot things. It was marvelous, absolutely marvelous. And they did a build and they sent it to Nintendo, who sent them back some feedback. The feedback were 3 little drawings. That's it. And they picked up the drawings and they're looking at them and going, what the hell are this? And they go, is it Japanese? No, I don't think so. I think it's pictures. What's it pictures of? I think that's the head of a frog. I think that might be a rabbit, and I think that might be a fox. Well, what the hell did they send us that for? I don't know. So they contacted Nintendo and said, why have you sent us a frog and a rabbit and a fox? And they got, these will fly the ships. Fly our spaceships. Frogs don't fly spaceships. These do. What are you talking about? You've gone mad. And at the end, they fight an enormous space monkey with big hands. And Argonaut went, You have gone mad. We're not doing that. We are morally offended. And they got sent back another letter, and I've seen the letter. John Dean had it. And it says in Japanese, translation underneath it, you are not the audience. So they put the frog and the rabbit and the fox and the big monkey, and lo and behold, made gajillions and gajillions of money. So, you're going to be making games for other people, not for yourself. Oh, another quick note, just dawned on me. When I meet a single player, just a player, and they want to give me feedback, I already know that 99.9% of what they're going to say is utterly useless, because they don't know what they're talking about. But when thousands of players tell you, they're usually very, very, very accurate. Single players are stupid, groups of players are frighteningly clever. And as you get older and do this, you become less and less the audience. So there we go, that's that. As you can see, I lied about it. It just dawned on me about the player thing. That's called preamble. And now we're going to my favorite piece of art, which corporate left alone. There's another do, be flexible. Who knew they did yoga? No show of hands? Haven't spent any time with them at all, have you? You've got to be flexible. I'm going to give you 4 examples of being flexible that apply to me. They don't necessarily apply to you, but if you do them, chances are you'll have a good career. 1, I am a digital gypsy. Lived in 11 countries. Worked in 15 studios. Worked on, I think the last time I counted, 53 games. Makes it very difficult to buy a house. Very difficult to put kids through school, because I'm always moving. Very difficult to get married, easy to get divorced. Makes it very difficult for you to understand where you're going to be in the future. But it does mean you get to travel a lot and you get a job and people are very happy to hire you. The more flexible you can be, the better. I was a digital gypsy. Be prepared to work in strange places. I've been in a studio that was in a fish market. It's a bit weird. We weren't even making a game about fish. I've lived in countries where I didn't understand any of the road signs. That happened quite a lot, to be fair. The more you're willing to work in strange places, the better off you'll be in the job market. Take risks. We're naturally conservative. Well, I'll let you into a clue. The computer games business is really, really unstable. Things go bust and things go boom all the time. You've already taken a risk deciding to be in it. I mean, if you wanted an unfireable tech job, you'd go and work on moon tech, because by the time they've sent your thing to another planet, you've retired. If you wanted to be an artist, you'd go to Google, so that one day you can write the word Google in a strange way. You have a job for life. If you want to just go off and do things that involves being cool, go work for Apple. But you lot have all decided to go and work in gaming, which is madness. So if you've already made that leap, taking more risks is easy. Now, if you can find a great company, that's wonderful. I picked Wargaming for my latter years, never regretted it. They're wonderful to me. That's not an ad. I suppose it is. But what it is just me being honest with you about where I am. And lastly, and this implies to my joining Wargaming, be prepared to go backwards to go forwards. Sometimes taking a pay cut and going and working on something else will open up more doors for you. Sometimes agreeing to go and work somewhere that's difficult or hard will make you a better person. Flexibility, super powerful skill, comes easy if you've got a lot of passion. It's also easy if you get a lot of joy. So there you are, that's that slide. Do number 6, communication. If you can't talk to people about what you want, and you can't listen to people, and you can't share ideas, you're doomed. As far as I can tell, there are 3 types of communication. There's people who communicate through the written word, reports, books, emails. There's people who communicate through drawings, whiteboards, illustrations. And there's people who communicate through talking and listening. I think it's vitally important you decide which you are. I'm dyslexic, so I can't read anything. I'm also a terrible artist, so I don't draw too good. So the way I do it, talking. That's a surprise, Paul. You caught me completely off guard with that choice. Why, thank you. The other thing you need to learn is the people you're communicating with, how do they get their information? If the person you're talking to gets information by reading, then stop talking to them. Write something. If you can't, get somebody to write it for you. If somebody communicates through drawings, meet them on their ground. Try and draw something so you can communicate how that works. The better you are at it, the better job you'll have, the better career, the more joy, the more passion. Nice and easy, that one. Don't focus incorrectly. This is really important. You're going to do a lot of hard work, you're going to look at a lot of things, and you're going to apply your energy. But if you focus on the wrong stuff, you're just going to waste your time, the studio's time, the game's time, everybody's time. So you have to self-discipline. Most of us can't make a game on our own, so you're going to work through other people. So you need to focus on working on what's useful and what works. Don't have brainstorming meetings 2.5 years into making a game. It's a waste of time. We need to have figured all that out beforehand. Most importantly, be very, very wary of urgent, trivial work, because it will mess you up. All of a sudden we've got a fire drill, everyone has to do something, and the thing we're trying to fix is useless. It's not really needed. We're obsessing on this thing when we don't have to. We've wasted another milestone. And lastly, projects get delayed by a year all the time. But they don't actually get delayed by a year. They get delayed one day at a time until it's a year. And that's because we're not focusing. If you find yourself in a position where you think your team's not focusing or other people aren't, hold up your hand, as scary as that may sound, and ask some questions. If you're being asked to focus on the wrong things, get clarity and get them to explain it to you so you can better understand it. Don't focus incorrectly. It's madness, I tell you. Okay, do number 7. Network, and by that I don't mean the cables and the ping, I mean meeting people. Good news, you're at this place. This is networking. Networking is very important. You meet the same people over and over again in this industry. Met this lovely lady from DICE. And she was talking to me, and she basically said, "Cool, you know an awful lot about DICE." Well, yeah, I do. But then I know an awful lot about loads of studios, because I network very well. Now, networking is a skill. Well, I've even got a slide for it. That's good. The more people you have in your network, the better, because you never know who you want to talk to. So pick them up, and don't just pick up people who are in your discipline. Say hello to people outside of it. More importantly, keep your network up to date. You haven't got a network with a person if you haven't spoken to them for 7 years. That's just a dead connection. You also need to get younger people in your network because they know stuff you don't know, like my children, who understand lots of things I don't know anymore. You then need to check in with them. Send them notes, say hello. Don't use that congratulate them on their work anniversary bullshit. That just means that you're looking for a job and you're on LinkedIn all the time. Ring them up, send them an email, go to a show, visit the studio, send them a card, invite them to a wedding. But most importantly, don't be rude. Some people are busy. Don't just throw yourself at them and try to link with them. You've got to earn the right to be in a network. Show a little bit of good manners and you'll be fine. So there you are, network rules. More the better. Don't be rude is really important, by the way. I used to be very rude. Didn't do me any good at all. Do number 8, technology. There was a time when I knew every single piece of technology there was. I was the person in my family that everyone called up because I was the only person who understood it all. Back in those days, my parents didn't understand anything. They struggled with toasters. Now I find out that I've turned into my parents, and I no longer understand how technology works, and I have to ask my children. I don't even bother reading the instructions. I just give it to the children, and they make it work. Technology comes in loads of different things. For gaming, you've got engines, platforms, payment systems. You've got bug reporting. You've got art tools, distribution systems. It goes on and on and on. You can't be expected to know all of it, but you should at least show an interest to know some of it. Just a little bit of the lingo. Earlier on today, I left 2 artists alone because I realized they were going to start talking in artist language, which means textures and nanolight, and I don't really understand any of it. But I knew it was unreal. Technology, keep on top of it, super important. Now we get to the speedy bit. Time management. Time is not a renewable resource. Use your time wisely. Find a system that works for you. I don't care what the system is. You can use Outlook's calendar. You can get one of those books. You can have a PA. You can set alarms on your iPad. I don't care. Just get something that sorts out your time management. Me, I use a simple system. I get a piece of paper, and I write down all the things I'm going to stop doing. I'm no longer going to that meeting. I'm no longer replying to that email chain. I'm no longer going to be part of that group. And then I just stop doing it. Works wonders. But that's just me. Sort it out. Find what works. That's what my system is. Do it. This one, don't do death by meetings. Ask yourself some simple questions. Am I actually getting any value being here? Am I giving any value for being here? If not, leave meeting. If you can think about that beforehand, and the answer is no, don't even go to meeting. Contemplate declining meeting. Just do work instead. There's a whole bunch of people who are paid just to go to meetings. They're generally not you. You make things. Remember, for these people, activity is the replacement for achievement. They can't get the build working. Go and work on the build. Last do, wisdom. Wisdom's really important. It's what knowledge turns into. Knowledge goes from basically Google into wisdom, which is when you don't know how to fix the washing machine and you've downloaded the PDF and you've watched YouTube and you still can't get it to work, you ring your dad. And he goes, kick it round about there. What do you mean, just kick it? Just kick it like that. Dad, will you just kick it? So he kicked it and it worked. Because I've got wisdom. Wisdom will help you in the later part of your career. It's very hard to get. It's easier to get if you fail at things. Because that definitely tells you what you shouldn't do. There's an old adage, measure people by their scars, not their medals. Because you need people who've lost a couple of times, makes them better. And here we go. Don't overwork. Overworking is a big sin and a big crime. I want you to stop doing it. Far too easy to do too much work, and I'll tell you why. You've got a lot of other work to do that isn't work. You need thinking time. That's work. You need to work smart, not long, because you've got to have a private life. You need self-improvement time. You've got to get better at what you're doing. You can't do that if you're constantly making another tree. You need culture time, so you can have joy and passion in the studio you're at. You also need time to help others. I'm here. It's cost Wargaming money to send me here, and I'm not doing my job. And I'm giving away a load of stuff that we think about. Why? Well, because I want to help others. Because I've got the passion for gaming, and I want you to have it, and I want you to get good at it. And you also need recovery time. You can't do that if you're just chained to your bloody desk or in Zoom meetings. So, work smart, not long, thinking time, self-improvement, culture time, time to help others, recovery time. Oh, we're right at the end. Lastly, remember, it's only when you're loved that everything makes sense. And the reason that's important is because computer games is a love affair. Sometimes it's brilliant. Sometimes it's painful. Sometimes it really, really goes the way you want. Other times it breaks your heart. That love affair is where you get your passion. That love affair is where you get your belief, where you get your culture, where you get everything from. And you're all invited. All of you. Don't let anyone say you can't make it in this industry. I did. I had a terrible hand of cards, other than I was white and male and spoke English. But apart from that, the rest of it was shockingly bad. I love games. I love talking about them, listening to people talk about them, and sharing things. It's been an absolute honor to be here. I love all the staff who've helped out, from the sound people, the organizers, everyone. They've been great. If you give a big round of applause for all those people who put the show together, that would be really, really helpful.
Thank you for a great, inspiring speech. If anyone has any questions, you can get some wisdom and some knowledge. Just please come on the microphone and ask something if you want.
Is it gladiatorial combat?
Yeah.
You have to fight them.
Okay, let's warm up the audience and I'll ask you maybe some obvious thing. You're talking about don't overwork. Yes, some kind of obvious things. It's about burnout, right? But maybe you have some tips how to stop doing things and say no to yourself.
No. Hardest thing in the world is to say no and mean it. Hardest thing in the world is to get your boss to understand you said no. Hardest thing in the world is to get them to understand you're not being awkward. Just tell them nicely. No, honestly, if you want the best out of me, I can't do that. I'm overworked, I'm overtasked, I need to do these other things. It's so expensive for a company to hire people. It's so expensive for them to train people. It's so expensive to keep you there that if you explain to them that if they keep this up, you're going to leave, you'll be surprised and happy at how they will moderate for you. Companies want to make games faster and better, so help educate them on how to do it.
But that's when your boss pushes you to work more. But what about if you push yourself to work more?
Well, I work really hard, but I work really hard on all the bits I talked about. Because that's work. It's not just knocking out a document. It's not just modeling a texture pack of that. It's not just laying down a level. So I've been doing this longer than some of you have been alive, right? And I'm pushed on by a crazy internal drive. And they still let me do it, as mad as that seems. And I do it all day and again in my dreams. How about that? What was it? Creative poet.
That's nice. Any questions?
If not, have a good summit. Enjoy yourself and thank you. Oh, there's one coming.
Yeah, we have
Rats, I nearly got away with it.
Almost. Thank you for the lecture. My name is Pavel Kondrashov from Malsoft. And I wanted to ask, well, you just said about flexibility, yes.
Yeah.
And the crazy world of game development. We had 2008, then 2020, then 2019, so many crises. What's it to you? Like, was it a nuisance, or it's like a new opportunities, and how did you cope with all of those changes, personally?
So 2008, you mean the financial crisis?
Yes, that's led to the death of discs, basically.
Oh, the transition to digital?
Yeah.
Oh, God, yeah. Well, it's the easiest way of explaining that. Movies were terrified of adding sound. They thought it would be the end of their industry. And then they were terrified of color arriving. That was going to be the end of their industry. And then they were terrified of television arriving. They were absolutely terrified of videotapes. They were petrified of DVDs, and they were absolutely out of their minds when streaming and the internet happened. Yet we make more movies now, they make more money now, and they employ more people now. So the industry's got a self-healing system about it. When you go through the shock, the movement, I would argue that is learn about technology, talk to industry experts, be willing to take risks. That part of what I talked about is where I would be. You also need to realize that sometimes you can just be unlucky. The industry can shake you out. And what you have to do then is decide if you want to go back into it. And that might take some time and effort. But that's okay, because you've got the passion and the drive and the dedication and you've got the right focus, you will get back into it. You might have to go backwards a bit to go forwards, but it will work. So that was 2008. What was the other thing? So streaming and digital.
2020, like death of...
The pandemic.
Well, yeah, almost.
The pandemic changed everything because it challenged all the work practices, but I think it challenged them for the better. It proved a couple of things for me that I think are absolutely true. Outsourcing can actually happen in the Western world, because that's effectively what happened with the pandemic. We all got outsourced, but they still needed us. But it also shows that putting people together in the same building is very important. You don't need to have everyone there, but you do need to have some people there. You're much more productive when there's all of you together. It also gave individual responsibility to people. Productivity actually went up for us in the pandemic. Rather than bringing people into work and putting them in and thrashing them in meetings, it turns out that if we just let them sit in their underwear without their cameras on, they're happier and they seem to do better work faster. So I thought the pandemic was horrible and difficult and awkward, but
For management, maybe.
but I think it was survivable, and it was survivable ultimately.
Thank you.
Oh, no problem at all.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. I think
Thank you very much.
I'll come over and talk to you on your own. Or do you
Yeah,
want-
sure. If
Oh,
you
no, another one. God, you're never going to let me
stop
learn.
applauding.
I wanna go
Don't be
upstairs.
shy and ask anything you want. It's just the only chance.
Hey, Paul.
Hello.
Thank you very much. I like you as a speaker. Your personality makes great of it.
Thank you.
So I have a question. What if your boss is not actually a creative person? He doesn't have any compassion. He doesn't adhere to those things which you mentioned in the
Oh,
presentation.
great question.
Yeah. What to do in this situation if you have to work with him?
All bosses aren't creative. Every single one of them. For them to be bosses, they can't be creative. They've got to be obsessed with their career and money and
Yeah,
position.
money.
Yeah. So you are faced, therefore, with only two choices, in my opinion. Number one is don't try to get them to be creative or talk to them in a creative way. You're wasting your time. It's like asking my dog to go and clean the kitchen.
Yes, not made
She's
for
not very
that.
good
yeah.
at it. So that would be my first thing. But my second one, and this is a secret, and if there's any executives in here, don't listen. I find that if you bring them something, they have an obsession to want to add to it. So you bring them something blindingly obvious and tell them you don't know what the answer is. So you go, we have a teapot, we have some tea, we've got a cup, and we've got some hot water. We're at a loss. We don't know what to do. And the executive will go, let me tell you. You could make a cup of tea. And you go, perfect, that's what we're going to do. And they go out, we've got the answer, we're making a cup of tea. And the executive goes away super happy. So the executive will never leave you alone until they think they've contributed to the idea. So if you give them some room to contribute, even if it's just a choice, what do you think, the blue one or the red one? The blue one, fabulous.
Cool. So you're advising to
Lie to them.
make up a scenario, right?
Yes, upwardly manage them.
Cool. Thanks. Thank you.
What a perfect project management.
It's not their job to be creative, God bless them. Their job's to give me the money. I just need them to be happy.
Okay.
Are they going to let me go? Are they going to let me go?
We have some time, so you can ask something more. Okay.
Here we go.
Okay.
It's a
Here we go.
You realize I'm an introvert. I'm dying up here.
Yes, you are like tempting us. So you said that you better have a joy to work with people you're working with, like to like
Yes.
them, blah blah. What do you think about flirt on work, or maybe some work romances?
Hang on, just make sure I understand the conversation. You love hanging out with people who make computer games. What about if they're together and they're doing things beyond being together? Are you from HR?
No.
Sounds like a trap.
No, I'm from the other side.
Well, true story. My wife makes computer games. And every now and then we work in the same studio. Not often, but we do. We didn't meet making computer games. I think that work, stuff like that is the same. It's got nothing to do with computer games. It's just, it's everywhere. Some companies really don't like it. Some companies have structures, they're against it. My advice would be the following. You have to work with these people for a long time. If you do something stupid, embarrassing, inappropriate, or open shows of affection when you're already married, well, you're a moron. And you shouldn't be doing that. But if you genuinely find someone at the workspace who shares your passion and energy, well, then go check with your company if they object to it. If they do object to it, but you found true love, one of you leaves the studio. If they don't object to it, never report to each other and make sure you work in separate departments. And never wallpaper together.
Thank you.
Pleasure. That is by far the oddest question I've had in the last 8 years. Which I shall work into a talk.
Okay, now we get a lot of wisdom.
For the love
Today.
of God.
Sure. Okay, another question. Here we go.
Is it true introverts can have cardiac arrests on stages when they're kept up here against their will? Yes.
Okay, I can ask you in private.
No, you're fine.
Okay. I was like doubting whether should I ask this question.
Always
but
ask.
After previous, I
Always
understood that I
ask.
can. So I noticed that previously, like 15 years ago, there was, or maybe 20 or more, there was not so many computer games, but all of them were just nice. And now we have a lot, but almost all like suck. So I'm thinking, well, maybe it's all about industry. Maybe I'm choosing games not the right way, or maybe I'm just like something wrong with me. Maybe you can give some advice.
Okay. It's more
Maybe I
it's a
play
more complicated
wrong.
question. Than you, okay, so we'll go back in the Wayback Machine, right? If you go back far enough and you get to arcade games, these are great big wooden cabinets with sticks, and you had to pour money in them. You know how people complain about mobile games? You have to keep putting money in them. Well, we were doing that in the 1970s. That was invented back then. There were, during that period, the heyday of arcade games, approximately 14,000 different games made over about a 5-year period. Not bad, right? Then we had home computer games. Spectrums, Commodores, Amstrads, Amigas, Atari STs. You add all those together, and you're clocking in at around about 85,000 computer games. That's a lot of computer games. Then you move into the first console, Gen 1, Gen 2 consoles. The number drops. PlayStation collectively over 1, 2, and 3 comes out at about 4.5, give or take, depending which way you count it. So that was a lot drop off. Then the internet arrives. And in the last numbers I saw for 2017, just under 6.5 million games. There are 20,000 mobile games released every month on mobile. 20,000. Now, that doesn't mean they're all great, because what we've done is we've created this crazy pyramid. And the thing I think you're talking about is right at the top, the AAAs, where we've been starved on AAA. So I would say the following. If you want to find interesting games, cool games, games that are weird, search indie, search mid-level studio size, search mid-level teams. They're doing crazy bonkers stuff. I'm not sure they're great games, but they're definitely interesting, and you can play them and enjoy them. As far as the big games, well, it's all your fault. And it is. And it's also the fault of the people who buy games. And I'll tell you why. In 1984, if you wanted to buy a cartridge for Nintendo, it cost you about 60 quid. In 2024, and you want to buy a Call of Duty, it costs you 60 quid. In other words, it's completely flatlined. We're not prepared to pay the going rate for a computer game. That's why we had to move to microtransactions and expansions to try and prop it up. The business model for AAA doesn't work because no one will cough up the cash, because it would cost you something like 1,500 euros And we all go, I don't want to pay that. And then you turn around and go, well, it's only got 30 hours of enjoyment. The price of 3 pizzas, how dare it? So what that's done is the games are so expensive to make, the companies can't afford to make them and them to fail. And so they've gone and made safety games. So if you look at the different houses, they work in no particular order. EA makes its sports games. That's its money engine. And then it has some ancillary games that it makes, Battlefield and stuff like that. And then it has its tentpole show-off engines, like BioWare stuff. Their job is to win awards. They don't make any money. You go to Activision, and it's just powerhouse franchises smashing you into the ground. It's another Call of Duty. Their basic concept of creativity is the same creativity you see with razors for shaving. There's a man paid £10 million a year. He works for the shaver company. They bring him in, they sit him down, and they go, what should we do? And he goes, one more blade. Genius! Right? So they go in and go, what should we do? Another Call of Duty. Right? So that's where they've had to go, because that's the only way to get safety. Microsoft is on acquisition madness and overpaying for everything. Bethesda's never going to make a profit. It's bought for gajillions, but they're trying to buy Activision for 70 billion. Do you realize how many Call of Duties you're going to have to make that back? It's not going to make a profit till like 3010. Then you've got Ubisoft, who are in a right mess because they've ended up going Assassin's Creed, rabbits. Assassin's Creed with rabbits. And they've got their own engine, they're figuring it out. So it's really, really hard right now to make a super big game without losing all your money. So that's just, it's a cycle. It'll change. With Unreal 5, the level building technology is amazing. The lighting technology is amazing. The interface is amazing. And that's going to bring down entry level how to get quality games. Photogrammetry, where you can just photograph things and put it in as an object, is going to super increase indie games and how they look. As the platforms widen, that's going to get better. As we figure out how to do streaming gaming, everything will change. And back catalog is going to become the big thing. The retooling back catalog is going to be the next go-to place, because it's easier to get a Metal Gear and scrub it clean again than it is to actually make a new game. It's risk. And so the way to think about it is currently AAA is in the Marvel Cinematic Universe mode, where it goes, it's the same movie over and over again.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Okay, time for one last question. Okay, here we are. He's the winner. Please.
I only get closer because of my hearing. If I don't do it, I can't actually hear what you're saying.
I'm just doing this because I want to keep you here longer. But anyway, I want to connect to his question. As he said, right, with more years are passing, we're starting to see like there are not that much interesting games, and you mentioned that if we want to look for more creative, more original games, maybe there'd be more in the indie space.
Absolutely, 100%.
And like my question to you is like, I mean, I'm a gamer, I love gaming, and previously I had no money, okay? But I loved gaming, but I couldn't spend on it. And obviously in the market, there's only a few free-to-play good games compared to the quality of pay-to-play games.
Right.
And my question for you is like, why does the industry not promote more free-to-play games that, you know, can, I mean, target an audience such as my past self, an avid gamer with basically zero budget.
Okay.
But obviously, just to give a bit more context, obviously, as you say, the indie devs need a bit of support for their development because they don't have a big budget behind them.
Yep.
But just wanted to ask you what you think about free-to-play and pay-to-play.
I love free-to-play. I think free-to-play is fantastic. It's my all-time favorite launch platform because there's no friction. You get to go in and try, and you get to figure it out. But what has hurt free-to-play is it's had to grow up, and it's had to learn. So the biggest problem we had was a thing called Farmville. And Farmville basically screwed us for 15 years. Because instead of just being a sort of cutesy cow farm game, it became this advertising monetization monster. And so we got driven by, getting a bit technical here, the buy-in, buy-out, cohort, cost per install versus ARPU, ARPU, average revenue per user. Very lots of junky language you don't need to know. And so you ended up having terrible games that were making vast amounts of money. Well, the executives aren't very clever. So if you go to them and say, we can make a terrible game and make a vast amount of money, all we have to do is screw people really hard down on things and force them to buy everything, then that's the games they'll make. So we've had to wait for that to grow up and wait for that to get past. And we are actually getting past that. But some games were ahead of the curve, he said shamelessly, like World of Tanks. No, it's not an advert, it's me being absolutely serious. In the free-to-play market, there's this concept which is called unlimited spend, right? And it's this idea of how quickly can I get you to give me $100,000? Can I get you to give me $100,000 in an hour? 10 hours? A day? 10 days? And this drives how they design the games. And some games come out and can do it in an hour. Because there's an unlimited spend. You can just keep buying whatever the gems are or whatever. You can just keep going, and it's all complete nonsense. World of Tanks has no unlimited spend. It's capped. It's actually pretty reasonable to just play as a hobby. If you're willing to drop $30 every now and then, you can have a fantastic time. But if you decide not to drop anything, you can still have a good time. But these games only work by volume. Because I can assure you now, if you've got no money to buy a game, if I give you a free-to-play game, you're still not going to buy anything. So at that point, you are there to give me volume. You're there to make the game more exciting. If it's a multiplayer game, you're effectively helping me with content. And you're the people that other people fight against or build against, or you're in guilds. You might be a very social player, so you're there to help build social context with Instagram and the rest of it. You might be a streamer. So I don't need you to give me money if you're going to do that. So it's going to take a little bit longer for the free-to-play games to come out the other side. They're much healthier than they were 5 years ago. They're significantly healthier than they were 10 years ago. They will be even better 5 years from now. And the reason for that is because there's a whole new raft of game makers who understand what free-to-play is. When I was doing it, no one understood it. You want to see the hate that came our way when we started doing free-to-play games. I mean, everybody hated us. You were at EA, you might as well have been a war criminal. And so now this new generation, free-to-play is just another option. They're completely at peace with it, which means we can now make decent free-to-play games. Whereas if you're an indie, you want to make Stardew Valley. Have you played Stardew Valley just generally? Yeah, okay, right, yeah. 270 million in revenue. 11 people. Indie. It rocks. So that's where we go. I think free play is going to get better. Interesting games are in indie land. AAA will heal itself. It's just going to go through a cycle.
And just last question, would you
Sure.
advise, for example, a small indie dev team to pursue a free-to-play game despite the risk?
I think you've got a small indie dev team. 1, enjoy eating noodles. 2, enjoy having no money of any type whatsoever. 3, find someone who can help you with the business side, publishing in particular. Got someone like Devolver. 4, most important, build within your capabilities. So a crew used to work for me, and they said, we want to go and make a game. And I sat down with them and I helped them out. And I found out that they loved a game called Nuclear Throne. And I said, rip that off. And they were like, what? Just copy that. Copy that, but make it better. And then I went and found the people who made Nuclear Throne, who were no. And I said, do you mind? And they went, no, everything's fine. And then I put them in touch with Devolver. Will you publish this? And they said, yeah, give us that. And I bought them their first rent and that, and they went off and they made a game called Enter the Gungeon. There's only 4 of them, 5 of them actually. Now they're multi-millionaires and they drive up in front of me in their big swanky cars because they have more money than me. So it's doable, but you've got to keep the feature small, know what you're doing, and have people around you who can help you.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay. Thank you. Now you're free.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please applause to the poll.